I stopped paying brother's bills and now he moved in me with his wife and 4 children. Parents laughed at me, but when the real estate agent said, house was sold, then parents. For 12 years, I was my brother Rupert's lifeline. Every unpaid bill, every emergency expense. Guess who got the call? It was me. I can't even count the number of times I bailed him out. At first, I didn't mind. He was struggling, had a young family to support, and I thought, hey, family helps family. But that way of thinking cost me more than I ever imagined. You'd think after all that time and all that money, he would have gotten his act together. But no. Rupert had a habit of running from job to job like a man running from responsibility. Every time something got tough, he'd quit and move on, never staying long enough to build anything solid. On top of that, he kept having kids. By the time the 4th came along, I knew the cycle wasn't going to stop anytime soon. The worst part? I had this terrible habit of saying yes to him. I didn't even know how to say no anymore. I just kept sending money, paying for repairs, groceries, even random things like school fees and daycare. Oh, and let's not forget the expensive gifts over the years. Birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, you name it. I've paid for tablets, laptops, even a damn flat-screen TV when their old one broke. Meanwhile, my parents didn't give me a dime to help with any of it. They were too busy living their second honeymoon phase, gallivanting around the country and enjoying their retirement. Look, I don't blame them for wanting to live their lives. After all, they raised us. But I can't deny that their hands-off approach to Rupert made my life a lot harder. Every time I'd ask them to help him, my dad would chuckle and say something like, "Son, we've earned the right to relax. Besides, you're doing a good job." Yeah. Thanks for the pep talk, Dad. But Rupert wasn't just a victim of bad luck. No, he was also to blame for the financial mess he found himself in. He wasn't reckless in a flashy, show-off kind of way. He just had this mentality that he could always figure it out later. And somehow, later, always became my problem. He never learned to manage money, never made a solid plan for his family's future. He always relied on things to magically work out, and for 12 years I was the magic. Then things started to go south for me. My company cut salaries across the board, and suddenly I was making less money than ever. For the first time in my life, I was financially strapped, and it scared me. That's when I realized I couldn't carry Rupert on my back anymore. I couldn't even take care of myself. I had to end it. I called Rupert and explained the situation to him. I was nervous. Part of me expected him to get angry or guilt-trip me like he had before. But he didn't. He just let out this long, tired sigh and said, "I get it, man. You can't help us anymore. We'll figure something out." I won't lie, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. It was finally over. Or so I thought. The next morning I was awakened by my doorbell ringing nonstop at 9 a.m. I stumbled to the door and opened it to see Rupert standing there with Karen and their 4 children. They had a couple of suitcases and some grocery bags with them. Rupert gave me this sheepish grin, like he knew exactly how ridiculous the situation was, but didn't care. "Hey, Stanley. So, we realized we don't have any other options. So, we're moving in with you." I stood there in shock. I couldn't even form words. Before I could process what was happening, Karen and the kids were already in the house, dragging things into the apartment like they owned it. They immediately claimed the 2 spare bedrooms. My living room filled up with toys and clothes in minutes, and somehow they managed to take over my kitchen, too. I should have told them no. I should have stopped them in their tracks and sent them right back out the door. But I didn't. I think I was still half asleep, honestly. Also, deep down I was thinking, well, I haven't sold the apartment yet. They can't stay forever, right? This is just temporary. Of course, I was lying to myself. Temporary can last a lot longer than you think if you're too nice to stand your ground. Rupert wasn't working at the time. He said he was too exhausted from dealing with the kids. Karen worked online, but it wasn't much money. They asked me for small things at first: groceries, supplies for the kids, gas money, and I gave in out of habit. I didn't think things could get any worse. But they did. Things spiraled out of control. Within a week, my apartment didn't feel like my own anymore. The 2 spare rooms were a mess of toys, clothes, and homework. The kids were noisy, always running around, yelling, fighting over whatever game they were playing. I'm not someone who needs total peace and quiet, but come on. I was working long hours just to stay afloat, and coming home to chaos was exhausting. Karen, to her credit, tried to keep things in order. She had her online job, but between that and wrangling the kids, there wasn't much time for cleaning or organizing. And Rupert? The guy was checked out. He spent most of his time sitting around, scrolling through his phone or watching TV like he was on permanent vacation. Every time I tried to get him to get a job, he'd hit me back with, "I'm just too burnt out, man. These kids wear me out all day. I'll figure something out soon, I promise." Sure. Soon. That word had become a joke. It didn't take long for my parents to find out about the situation. I hadn't told them I was too embarrassed, but Rupert let it slip when he called them for advice. The next thing I knew, they were dropping by unannounced, pretending they were just in the neighborhood. I could see right through it. They weren't there to offer help, they were there to laugh at my misfortune. "Oh, look at you, Stanley," my father said during one of their surprise visits. "Still playing the hero, huh? You've got a real knack for helping everybody into the grave. What's the plan after this? You gonna adopt some more people?" My mom chimed in with a laugh. "You've always been too nice for your own good. I mean, come on, how can you let people walk all over you?" I tried to shrug it off at first, but every visit was the same. Jokes. Teasing. It was like I'd become the family punchline. I don't know what pissed me off more, the fact that they thought it was funny or the fact that they were right. I had let this happen. Finally, one afternoon after work, I snapped. My parents were over again, going through their usual routine. My dad made another crack about how I'd probably die broke and alone because I couldn't say no to anyone. I lost it. "Enough," I yelled. "You think this is funny? I've been holding things together for years. You haven't lifted a damn finger to help Rupert all this time, and now you come here to laugh at me? Get the hell out of here." The room fell silent. My dad looked stunned. My mom actually flinched, as if I'd slapped her. I don't usually raise my voice, I'm known for being quiet, but that day I just couldn't hold it in anymore. Rupert stepped in to calm things down. Hey, let's not fight. It's not worth it," he said, putting a hand on my shoulder. My parents didn't stay long after that. They left, but the damage was done. I knew it would be tense between us for a while. Rupert, on the other hand, seemed unperturbed. He probably thought I was just letting off steam. Then came the turning point 5 days later. I was cleaning up after dinner when the doorbell rang. It was the realtor. I told her weeks ago that I wanted to sell the apartment, and I'd almost forgotten that we had a showing scheduled. Luckily, Karen and the kids were away visiting friends, and the place wasn't a disaster. I like to keep things tidy, knowing that the agent or a potential buyer could stop by at any time. The agent brought a young couple to look at the place. We walked through the apartment, talked about the features, and discussed the price. The couple seemed interested. After they left, I felt a surge of relief. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally move forward. But when Rupert got home and I mentioned the showing, his face fell. "Wait, you're selling the apartment? Where the hell are we going to go?" I sighed. I knew this was going to be an awkward conversation. "Rupert, I've been planning on selling for a while. I was talking to agents before you moved in. Look, I'll help you sort things out. We'll get you a job. But I can't put my plans on hold any longer." He didn't argue. I think deep down he knew he'd pushed me to the limit. I told him we were moving everything to our parents' house. It was time for them to step up. Rupert didn't argue that night, but I could tell he wasn't thrilled with the idea. The next few days were tense. Karen was polite but distant, and Rupert seemed lost in thought most of the time. I didn't push him. I figured it was better to let him work it out on his own. 4 days later, we packed up all their things. I rented a moving truck and loaded it with their clothes, furniture, and toys. I tried to focus on the end goal, finally getting my apartment back and moving on with my life. But it was hard not to feel guilty. I cared about Rupert and his family, but enough was enough. That afternoon, we drove to my parents' house. They lived in a spacious 5-bedroom house in the suburbs. Plenty of room for everyone, right? Well, my parents clearly didn't think so. As we pulled into the driveway, I could see them sitting on their balcony, drinking tea and chatting. They looked relaxed and happy, like retirees living the dream. But as soon as they saw the moving truck, their faces turned in shock. My mother stood up, her jaw dropped. My dad put down his cup and marched toward us like he was ready for battle. "What is this?" he asked as soon as I got out of the truck. "We're moving Rupert and his family in," I said. "They need a place to stay and you have more than enough room." "Oh my God!" my dad barked. "This is our house. We worked our asses off to retire in peace. We're not turning this place into a daycare center." "Dad, I've been carrying her for over a decade," I shot back. "It's your turn now. He's your son too, remember?" My mother crossed her arms. "Stanley, this is ridiculous. You can't just dump them on us. We're too old to raise kids again." "Oh, so it was okay when I was the one doing it all these years," I snapped. "I was giving them money, paying their bills, and practically sacrificing my own life for them. And you didn't care because it wasn't your problem. Well, guess what, it is your problem now." The argument escalated from there. My parents tried every excuse in the book. "We're too old, we don't have the energy, we deserve to enjoy our retirement." I wasn't having any of it. I reminded them of how they'd laughed at me when Rupert moved in with me, how they'd mocked me for being too soft. Now the tables had turned, and they didn't like it one bit. While we were arguing, Rupert and Karen quietly started moving their stuff inside. My dad noticed and yelled, "Hey! I didn't agree to this." Rupert shrugged. "Look, Dad, we don't want to be here either. But we've got nowhere else to go. Stanley's right, we need help." My parents kept grumbling, but there wasn't much they could do. The truck was half unloaded. I wasn't going to back down. I told them in no uncertain terms that I'd done enough, and now it was their turn to step up. Finally, my father threw up his hands and stormed off, muttering under his breath. My mother just shook her head, looking defeated. I stuck around long enough to make sure everything was unpacked and set up. By the time I was ready to leave, my parents were sulking in the living room while Karen tried to keep the kids from making too much noise. I felt bad for everyone involved, but that was the way it had to be. As I walked out the door, my father called after me. "You're going to regret this, Stanley. Mark my words." I paused for a second, then turned and said, "Maybe. But I regret spending the last 12 years trying to fix something that wasn't my fault. Now it's your turn. Good luck." And with that I left. What do you think? Should I continue with what happens next? It took about a month to sell the apartment. There were inspections, paperwork, and endless phone calls with the realtor and potential buyers. I finally got a solid offer and accepted it. The sale was a huge relief, but now I needed a temporary place to stay while I looked for a rental. I was planning to move to another state soon to buy a house, but that kind of move takes time to prepare. I figured I could stay with my parents for a few nights. After all, Rupert and his family were living there now, and I figured everyone would be polite since I'd already done so much to help out. But wow, was I wrong. Things got weird fast. At first, everything was fine. My mom was her usual chatty self, and my dad was a little grumpy, but nothing out of the ordinary. Karen and the kids seemed genuinely happy for me when I mentioned the move. Rupert seemed motivated for once. He told me he was starting to apply for jobs again, which gave me a little hope that maybe this time things would be different. But my parents? They had a different reaction. They didn't seem happy about my plans at all. In fact, they barely acknowledged it. The next morning, over breakfast, my mother brought it up in a way that set the tone for everything that followed. "So, Stanley," she said, stirring her tea, "what about this house you're buying? Are you going to take Rupert and the family with you or what?" I blinked. "What?" "No, Mom. I'm moving on my own. They'll stay here. You've got plenty of room." My dad chimed in. "Come on, son. Be reasonable. Rupert and Karen need a fresh start, too. You have a good job, you can afford a bigger place. Why not get a house that will fit all of you? It would be good for the kids to have a stable environment." I was stunned. "You're serious? You expect me to buy a house and move Rupert's whole family in with me? How is that even remotely fair? I've already done more than enough for them." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. Families stick together. You have a responsibility here." "Responsibility?" I snapped. "For 12 years, I paid for everything: bills, emergencies, gifts, even rent when they couldn't afford it. I just sold my apartment because I couldn't carry everyone anymore. Now you're telling me to drag them into my new house? No. Absolutely not." The room fell silent. I could feel the tension building, but I didn't care. This was my chance to make a life for myself, something I'd waited years for. "You have 5 bedrooms," I went on. "You'll figure it out. You're her parents too. Maybe it's time you took some responsibility for a change." My father shook his head in disbelief. "You're being selfish, Stanley. After all we've done for you, Dash." I cut him off. "What exactly have you done for me? When I was struggling, you didn't offer to help. You just sat back and let me do it all. And now that I'm finally putting myself first, I'm the selfish one? Give me a break." Rupert remained silent the whole time, but I could see the discomfort on his face. I didn't want to attack him, but this conversation had been brewing for years. My parents needed to know the truth. After breakfast, I pulled Rupert aside and told him bluntly, "You need to step up, man. You can't keep relying on other people to save you. Karen has been holding things together for too long. It's your turn now." To my surprise, he didn't argue. "You're right," he said quietly. "I've been thinking about it a lot. I'm applying for jobs. I have to do better for my family." It was the most responsible thing I'd heard him say in years. I wanted to believe him, but I knew time would tell if he meant it. 2 days later, just before I was about to leave and finalize my rental plans, my parents pulled one last stunt. My dad cornered me in the living room and said something that made my jaw drop. "Stanley, you know if you leave like this, you won't get any inheritance, right? We'll cut you out of the will." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you out of your mind?" I asked. "You really want to threaten me with that? You really need help. Why are you even saying that?" They both fell silent, realizing how ridiculous they sounded. I shook my head in disbelief. "I have lost all respect for you. I'm done with this conversation. Don't expect me to talk to you for a long time." I packed my bags the next morning. Rupert and Karen saw me off with genuine gratitude. Even the kids hugged me and said they'd miss me. But my parents stayed inside, sulking. I didn't say goodbye to them. As I drove away, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom. After leaving my parents' house, I hit the road and didn't look back. The city I moved to wasn't glamorous, but it had potential. The job market was solid, and I needed a fresh start. At first, living alone again felt surreal. No kids screaming, no cluttered kitchen, no late-night calls for money. Just silence. It was a strange kind of peace, like I'd forgotten what normal life even felt like. I rented a small but comfortable apartment. It wasn't much, but it did the job. I focused on my work, even with my reduced salary, and I slowly built up a financial cushion. I stopped being the family bank. Every dollar I saved was for me. It took a couple of months, but eventually, I found a house I really liked. It had 3 bedrooms, was fully renovated, and even came with a little backyard, nothing huge, but enough to give me that sense of stability I'd been chasing for years. I signed the mortgage papers and moved in. For once, it actually felt like my life was moving forward. But just when I thought I'd finally left all the drama behind, I got a surprise visit. I came home one evening to find Rupert sitting on my porch. He had driven out to see me without telling anyone. At first, I thought something was wrong, but he quickly reassured me. "Relax," he said with a smile. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I just wanted to see how you were doing." We sat down, cracked open a couple of beers, and talked. He told me about his new job in logistics. It wasn't his dream career, but it was steady work, and he was learning how to manage his money better. Karen had picked up more hours with her online job, and between the two of them, they were finally making it work. He also mentioned that they were moving out of my parents' house soon, renting their own small place across town. "That's good to hear," I said. "I was worried things would go downhill after I left." "Yeah, well, it was rough for a while," he admitted. "Mom and Dad weren't exactly thrilled about having us there. But in a weird way, I think it forced me to grow up. I realized I couldn't keep waiting for someone to save me." It was the most mature thing I'd heard him say in years. For once, I didn't feel like I had to carry him. He was starting to take responsibility, and it felt good. Like maybe I hadn't wasted all those years helping him after all. But then Rupert surprised me again. "Listen, I owe you an apology," he said, looking serious. "I put you through hell, Stanley. I leaned on you way too much, and I never stopped to think about how much you were sacrificing. I get it now. I just want you to know I'm sorry. I didn't expect that. For so long, I'd carried resentment toward him, thinking he'd never truly understand what I'd been through. But hearing those words, it made a difference." "Thanks, man," I said quietly. "That means a lot." We spent the rest of the evening talking about old times, laughing about stupid things we did as kids. It was the first time in years that I felt like we were equals, not just the guy who was constantly bailing him out. Before he left, he promised to keep in touch and to keep making things right, for himself and his family. After Rupert left, I thought maybe my parents might soften up too, but nope. They stayed as bitter and selfish as ever. From what Rupert told me, they had tried to manipulate him the same way they had with me, dropping hints that he should buy a bigger house someday and move them in. Luckily, Rupert didn't fall for it. I think he learned from my experience. The next time my mom called me, the conversation was awkward, to say the least. She mentioned the house I bought, but not in a congratulatory way. "Oh, I heard you bought a place," she said flatly. "Must be nice to afford that. Your brother's struggling, you know." "I'm aware, Mom," I said. "But he's doing better now, and so am I. I'm done being the family's safety net." She sighed dramatically but didn't argue. I think they finally realized that their guilt trips didn't work on me anymore. After that, we barely spoke. I wasn't upset about it. I needed the distance. Over time, life settled into a new rhythm. I kept my budget tight and focused on making my new life work. I met a few people through work, made some friends in the neighborhood, and even started dating casually. Nothing serious yet, but for the first time in ages, I felt optimistic about the future. A few months later, I got an unexpected SMS from my dad. He didn't write often, so I was curious. The SMS was short, just a few lines. He didn't apologize outright, but he acknowledged that I'd done a lot for the family and that he hoped we could move past our differences someday. It wasn't exactly warm, but it was a start. I decided not to hold my breath for a full apology. People like my parents don't change overnight. In the end, everyone found their own path. My brother learned to take care of his family. My parents stayed in their little bubble, living the way they always had. And me? I was finally free. I wasn't rich, I wasn't perfect, and I wasn't anyone's savior anymore. But I was happy.